everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Alex Hayes podcast. I am Alex Hayes. We're going to be starting off a little bit of a different series. So once a month, we're going to be doing a little bit of a review, a recap of lessons learned over weeks and months of conversations and experiences, either through our live events or through our podcast guests. So we can really kind of hone in on what it is that we're learning as we're going down this educational journey together. So that's what today is going to be about. And for me, so there's some really big key takeaways. I'd like to talk about our big live event we had on November 8th, which was Don't Die With Your Business Live at the Historic Hassayampa Inn in Prescott, Arizona. It was a phenomenal event. Everybody that showed up had lots of the same things to say. This is unbelievable value, unbelievable experience. Could not believe that was in our inaugural event and that it looked like we had been doing this for a long time. A lot of that high value, high touch, very professional event. We were very proud of what the final product was that we were able to put on, and really happy that it went off spectacularly. Some of the big key takeaways. So we had tax strategists, we had a wealth advisor, we had a M&A advisor, we had a business broker, local business broker, and we had an owner exit panelist discussion. And each of those conversations were so powerful. So right now, let's recap. For tax strategy, there is a lot of key points that tax implications need to have, right? And one of those things that you need to understand is paying more tax now. A lot of people take the strategy of, I want to pay as little tax today as possible each year, right? And that can be a good strategy. But if you look to exit, our tax strategists or tax advisors that we had on stage, they were saying that it was all about how to pay less on the exit, on the backside, making sure that they had plenty of wealth that was going to come their direction when they were ready to finally step back. And so they had a multi-year process laid out in which they were a C corp, and they sold off bits and pieces of their company. And because they were owned by the C corp, it was just selling assets of the company basically to different regional managers, and as a employee, basically employee agreement to take over ownership of client lists and the book of business they maintain. They were on board as an advisory service and still are to this day, but that was the big bulk of their strategy. Plus, what they did was something interesting, was that they paid themselves higher salaries, which, so the C Corp paid taxes, they paid themselves higher salaries, which they also were taking tax hits on as well, right, for the employment tax. But long term, they reinvested that money that they were taking out of the business as a salary. They put that back into the business as a loan. And that was really interesting as a strategy, because as such, loans are not taxable. So you can absolutely take your value back out of your business in the form of a loan that you gave it. And that's not taxable income, right? You're paying some taxes on the front side, but you're kind of using your business as a nest egg per se, as an investment vehicle nest egg, to be able to take that money back later, tax free. Right. So I thought that was a very interesting strategy that they brought forward. But the biggest piece of the puzzle was plan ahead. And you can see I'm outside, so there's a little bit of disturbance right now. Maybe we'll edit that out. Maybe we won't, because this is all very live. This is in the field. So yeah, this is part of our life, our journey together. So, but the biggest takeaway from that segment at the live event was plan ahead. Make sure that you have the right tax strategy to accomplish the maximum exit possible, right? And it may look different for different people. So, and then the flip side of that, minimizing your taxes each year today may make sense today, but maybe it doesn't make sense in the big picture, right? Maybe you're going to get hit with more taxes later on that you're not even aware of. So this is where having a comprehensive strategy is going to play to your benefit and to your favor. So that was the tax. Moving into wealth management. So the wealth management section, he had Tom Mitchell from 1AZ Credit Union, Senior Vice President of Wealth Management. He had so many powerful statements. One of the most powerful statements was understanding how to plan your business, right? Operating agreement wise, because there are 5 Ds that you have to pay attention to. Death. So death of you or death of a business partner. You have disability. So somebody becomes disabled. You have disinterest. Somebody wants to leave the business. The next one is distress. So your company is in distress. And then the last one was divorce. right? If you are not protected, if your business operating agreement doesn't account for all five of those major life events that do happen, and they happen a lot, then you are leaving yourself very exposed, right? You're leaving yourself and your business exposed to long term risk. Every day you don't address these issues when there's no fire to put out, you are adding to risk later and you're compounding that risk later because the bigger that business gets without addressing these issues, the harder it's going to be to address those issues. Make sure that you're looking at the full picture of your operating agreement. Make sure that you're covered with your risk management and you look at your business from an operating perspective. Look at it from an operating perspective and make sure that you look at all five of those D structures and that your operating agreement addresses each and every one of them because it's going to be so important. It's going to be really important to make sure that you are looking out for any potential risks in your operating performance. How do you handle a disagreement? It's something as simple as handling a disagreement in the business. How do you move forward? How do you avoid gridlock? Right. Another really good point that he brought up is he breaks a life cycle, right? The human life cycle. You have the first in every 30-year structures. You have the first 30 years, which he calls your learning years, your second 30 years, which is 3160, which is your earning years. And then you have your earning years, as he calls them, which is 61 to 90, essentially, or however long somebody else lives. But that's when you're burning the cash that you've been storing up, all that value, your nest egg you've been storing up. Typically, that's a general path somebody's life takes. So I thought it was really interesting to start thinking of your life in sequences, or and know where you're at, and understand that you have different priorities. Right? People have different priorities in different stages of their life, right? In the early years, it's about learning, about accumulating knowledge, being a valuable asset yourself to others around you. So you can then move into your earning years where you maximizing your earning potential and you're making good investments in yourself and in your business and in your economy. And you are able to grow your nest egg in a way that when you're ready to burn that value that you're taking and you're drawing down a sizable income, that you don't have to sacrifice lifestyle by the time you get to that burning years because you've planned ahead. So those are some really good key points I thought were the wealth management. Now there was way more in there, which again, if you want to see the full video or the full replay, you can head over to resources.don'tdiewithyourbusiness.com, and there's a special going on right now for $99 you can get lifetime access to our full workshop that we had on November 8th, which is each of those segments broken up into different workshop segments. So you can take your time, you can digest all that information, take good notes, and be able to come back on the other side yourself and get your strategy straight so that you know how not to die with your business. So that's a special that's only running through the end of this month. On December 1st, that price tag is going to be going up to $249. So if you're even thinking about grabbing this replay, now is your time. Don't wait. Don't wait. Don't put it on the sideline. I know turkey's going to set in. You're going to forget. It's going to cost you more later. So trust me, you want to grab it. If you're going to grab it, go ahead and grab it right now before it's too late, right? Before that price goes up. So then we had a good segment there for wealth management. So after wealth management, we had mergers, acquisitions, right? John Curtin. He's he's a mergers acquisition professional out of California. And he handles small, medium-sized deals, but he's handled deals in total aggregate of over $2 billion worth of value transfers. He is 17 years as a professional in investment banking. He brought some really powerful stuff when it comes down to it. If you have a business of substantial size that you're looking to maximize your exit, right? So we're talking businesses a minimum 5 million top line, minimum, right? To be able to look at this type of an exit structure. He was saying that you need to look at your business and get it professionalized, right? So that's the big thing. And one of the biggest roadblocks or hurdles that people have or companies have when they're going to try to exit is that their financials are not in order, right? This is probably the most fundamental thing of all of our businesses that we overlook because we think it's just to get our financials together so we know how much taxes we have to pay. That is wrong. You should be looking at your financials, understanding those numbers and those value drivers like it's the heartbeat of your company, because that's what's going to drive value on the backside, right? Those numbers, those financials that you are putting down on paper, those financials matter, right? For exit potential. And it's not just trying to get it cleaned up in a few months either. No, 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 no. A lot of you minimum, you need 3 years to be able to clean up, because you need consistent financials. You need consistent financials, growth strategies. You need to have a plan in place to be able to maximize, and so that you're selling on an upswing, not trying to sell on a downslope, right? You're not trying to sell out of desperation. Oh, well, let me just get whatever I can. No, you are trying to maximize your retail value or your resale value to the marketplace, and you're doing that because your financials are together. M&A guys, they're going to look at the last 5 years, not just three. They're going to go back 5 years, because a lot of things that they want to look for is potential liabilities, right? Our statute limitations sometimes fall between 3 and 5 years for a lot of lawsuits that could come back to a company. So they're going to go back 5 years minimum, and they're going to look at that last 5 years. But their due diligence period for them, they go back through the entire company history, right? They're going to really scrutinize the last 5 years, but every year that you've been in business, they're going to look at that. They're going to look at those numbers, and they're going to assess, and they're going to have questions. What happened here? Why did you drop here? What happened this point? What decisions were you making at this point? What was happening in the marketplace? Like, you need to be ready, right? And that's what an M&A guy does, is he's going to come into your business, and he's going to help get you professionalized to a point where they are prepared to handle external due diligence, right? And big thing, big picture too, if you think you're going to pull a fast one on somebody doing professional due diligence at that level, you are absolutely insane. That is what these guys do for a living. And if you think you're going to be able to pull a fast one because you're a quick talker on any of these guys that are due diligence professionally and are ensuring and protecting private equity, then you are crazy. You're crazy. It ain't going to happen. You are going to be scrutinized to death, right? So, but the big one was financials. The big one was financials, right? Make sure you got your financial house in order, and you have it in order years leading up, preferably at least 5. No, definitely more. You need 3 for sure. Like that's bare minimum. But 5 years, you need to make sure it's looking solid. So you need to plan ahead. Going back to the tax section, planning ahead as much as possible to make sure that you are preparing yourself and your business to receive maximum value. And again, we're talking about businesses that are making top line revenue of excess of 5 million was generally the feeling there, was generally the principle, right? But that was a great segment. He had 7 value drivers in the business. Again, the one that gets everybody is key man risk. A lot of risk all revolves around key man risk, which is usually owner founders. And owner founders, typically, they can get businesses and still be all about themselves and have a 10, $15 million operation, right? But it's still built around them and their ability, their skills, their relationships, their contracts, their handshakes, right? Or their leadership style, right? All decisions flow through them. So it's important that if you're going to look to exit, nobody wants to buy a business that's built around you. And one of the things that John said, he said in that quote that do you want to be rich or do you want to be king, right? That's an interesting complex, because people that tend to want to be more wealthy or more rich in the exit, they're not going to be king. They actually don't even want their name or their face involved with any of the decisions or anything to do with the company. They want it to be a totally passive instrument for themselves. Somebody that just loves to be in charge, loves to be in the hot seat, loves to be the guy that everybody goes to for all the answers. If that's what you want, just know you're not going to actually have a sellable business, or your business is not going to be worth as much as you think it's going to be worth, because it tends to be all around you and there's too much risk in there. But he also said at that level, there's an interesting dichotomy here, because in the next segment, we're about to talk to you about the business broker segment, this is the opposite. But what he was saying is that business owners that have built 10, 15, $20 million businesses, top line, tend to belittle themselves and tend to think less of themselves, that they tend to think that they're not worthy, or they really haven't built anything substantial, right? So they tend to actually downplay the value of their business. Whereas conversely, businesses that are less than $1 million in revenue tend to inflate the value of their business. So there's a little bit of a mental shift here. It's interesting. Like, the bigger some people get, the bigger somebody's business gets, the more humble they actually become in their perspective, right? And sometimes they feel like at any moment, the thing could disappear tomorrow, right? Everything could be gone tomorrow. And so they're still on this fight or flight, scrappy mode, and they're always trying to figure it out, right? So I did think that was interesting. But again, there's way more content inside of the actual replay. So again, if you haven't gone over it, click the button, go get your hands on the entire replay workshop, resources.don'tdiewithyourbusiness.com, and look for the icon that says uh, replay or workshop on it. That's going to be the one. Don't Die with Your Business live November 8th, right? So we talked about tax, we talked about wealth strategy, we talked about mergers acquisition. The next piece was about business brokers, right? A business broker, local business broker, Joe Cusack from Northern Arizona Business Brokers. I brought him on stage and we wanted to bring something down a little bit more to a down to earth more Main Street business, right? Because there's 96% of businesses fall under $1 million of revenue, right? So only 4% of businesses crack that 1 million of sales mark. So I brought him on stage to talk specifically about the sub-million market. Now he handles transactions larger than that, but I wanted to pick his brain on those smaller transactions. And he was saying, by and large, you're basically selling somebody a job. You're basically doing more of an asset sale. You're going to get something for your value, but don't think that you're going to get value for both your assets and the cash flow, right? That's another big misconception. You think, well, I have all these trucks and these vehicles or this I have all this stuff and then I have my cash flow, right? But you're going to have to pick one. You need to pick either an asset sale or you're going to have to you're basing your multiple off your cash flow. You're not going to do both because in a cash flow sense, all those assets that the company owns and has, in theory, are contributing to the cash flow and are enabling that cash flow to take place. So you're either going to get one or the other. You're either going to get an asset sale or you're going to get a cash flow multiple sale, right? You're not going to get both. You got to pick one. And typically, deals of that size will tend to be more asset sales, right? Because the cash flow is inconsistent, the financials a little shaky, the business has a lot of risk involved in it because it's built around the owner. Those that take the time, it's the same. Some of those same principles still apply for the bigger ones. Best way of increasing your value is getting your financials in order, making sure that you have clean financials, right? That are totally separate from your personal and the business, right? There's a separation between personal and business expenses, right? And making sure that you're not always, you're not using it as your personal piggy bank with all the different things and trips and all that other stuff that you want. Yes, you want to have fun, but if you want to prepare yourself, try to get as maximum as an exit as possible. Prepare yourself financially and have good financial disciplines. So again, some of the same principles. A statistic that came out during the live event as well is that you can increase your sale price by 14% simply by getting a business valuation done, professional business valuation. And that was interesting is that by statistics, those that get a business valuation within 18 months of selling will tend to get, or on average, get 14% higher valuation for their business. Just knowing what the business is worth gives them a little bit higher valuation, right? So if you want a 14% increase in your sales price, I highly recommend going and get that business valuation. Even if you think, well, it's a couple years away, get it. Know what your business is worth in today's market, right? You need to have more data to be able to come up with the right price. That was a really good segment, very powerful, very practical. So another big thing that Joe said and Joe talked about was dive under the desk moment. He said he's been in deals where everything's going well, got through due diligence, the two parties are coming together, and then it's literally signing day, and then the owner says, well, you know what? I actually don't know what I'm going to do with my life if this goes away, and I kind of like it. I'm not signing. And he dives under the desk, metaphorically. Maybe physically, but metaphorically, he's diving under the desk and refuses to sign the final deal at the finish line, right? Because he's not ready. He says a lot of his job that he has to deal with is making sure getting getting the seller ready, getting that seller ready. And a lot of times he says also too, he acts as both the buyer and seller agent, and he helps those buyers prepare themselves to take the business, right? So at the smaller range, it's a little bit more intimate, it's a little bit more personal. The valuations, the multiples aren't going to be as high for sure because the cash flows are very low, right? And you're basically trying to sell a job, right? You're trying to sell somebody a job at that point. So you're looking for an owner that's going to operate your business, and it's going to come practically probably most likely going to come with some terms of carryover where you got to stick around and you got to transfer those relationships, and you're going to have maybe some holdbacks. There's going to be some different hoops you're going to have to jump through in order to make sure that that transaction happens well, because there's going to be a lot of risk on the buyer side, right? So again, super powerful segment, very practical, real down to earth, main street businesses that are transacting. And then the last segment that we had was the owner exit panel. Now, the owner exit panel was one of the crowd favorites, right? Crowd really loved this panel, and because it brought real human emotion down to ground boots, ground level, right? What's happening in the trenches? I had Sarah Van Borgendine. She was one of the owners, former owners of Patine Hair Salon in Santa Barbara, California. She exited that company. I had Eric Knight, who has exited 3 different companies and now is working on his fourth exit, or his fourth company, Nexcel. And he was on the panel talking about tech. He was all about technology and now into AI, and he was talking about that sector. And then I had Tim Beal, the owner founder of Beal's Auto Body here in Prescott, multi-decade auto body shop. So we had a good wide range of experiences, from hair salons to tech, AI to auto body. So there was a whole lot of industries represented on this panel, and a lot of it was real about who you're going to pass the business off to, and a lot of it was this alignment, right, of understanding somebody that is going to take this to the next level. Is going to be able to lead this company going forward. Is going to be able to protect this investment that they've been making inside of this thing for decades. And it ended up being people. Sometimes it was people that they didn't expect. Right. With Sarah, she had an employee that was part-timer, a part-time mom that was just trying to make ends meet. She ended up being the one that early on they dismissed her as a candidate because she was just a part-timer, but it became obvious. And now today she is the new owner of the hair salon in Santa Barbara. So it's incredible. You never know who it's going to be. With Tim, it was a longtime employee that he had that started with him and had been with him for over a decade, and he was doing things better than he was. He was running the show better than Tim was, and that's when he knew, like, you know what, I need to. If I'm going to maintain, I'm going to keep this guy around. I need to make sure I give him a piece of this, because he has a lot of pull in my own business, because he's so key and central to this operation. So that was a natural progression of maturity from his employee base, right, that he had. And with Eric, it was about exiting to bigger companies, right? So he had bigger exits. He was building his companies to sell. So he had different mindset and mentality. And but they all kind of had similar stories and understanding who was going to take it, right? They thought about planning the future. They were intentional about moving in that direction, and each of them had different stories. And big point of what I wanted them to understand, or wanted them to convey, was, what did they step into next, right? What was the reason that they were able to get out of bed in the morning? What was driving them to exit their companies? And they all had different reasons, right? So Sarah was, she needed to be closer to her parents, right, to support them in their older years. She valued her time back and provide and take care of those that she loved. For Eric, it was seeing new opportunities, right? He became trapped inside of this thing that he was building because he took it to a level, and he didn't want to go beyond where he took it, but he wanted to keep this builder mentality. He wanted to invest in building things and starting and creating value. And so that was his reason for moving on. And then Dim, it was primarily a health reason, right? He needed to step back because he was having health complications that were preventing him from being full time in the business. But when he started taking a step back, he realized that he was really starting to enjoy his life with his family, his kids, grandkids, and he was really stepping back into that. So that was such a powerful panel discussion. And again, I highly encourage you, if you want to grab the full depth and feel the energy that was in that room on November 8th, go ahead now. Go and to resources.don'tdiewithyourbusiness.com and find where the workshop, exit workshop, or the live event replay is happening. It's $99 from now until December 1st. December 1st is going up full price to $249. So if you want to know what is happening, if you want to know what happened in that room and that transformational information education that took place on that day, go ahead and grab it now. You're not going to be disappointed. It comes with a full digital download of our entire workbook, 100 pages that are crafted to help you start navigating this conversation of exit and secession. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed this recap. This was super powerful. There's so much more to unpack inside this live event that we did. So, I hope you go and grab a copy before it's too late, before the price goes up. But with that, links below, check them out, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much.